Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of the Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today we're going to talk about building a great culture at a startup amidst a growing freelance economy, as well as some of the payment challenges that gig workers face. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Nico Simko, founder and CEO of Clair. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg. I'm very, very excited to be here. Looking forward to this back and forth.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's start with some background on your current venture, Clair. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do and the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So for background, Clair is a mobile banking solution that enables any freelancer or hourly worker or salary worker in the United States to get their money as soon as they finish a shift, a gig, or just a project. It's a pretty simple product at the end of the day. Think about a digital bank that just pays you as soon as it's feasible.
Yeah.
And the way it works is we partner with HR tech systems, mainly freelancing platforms, but as well as time and attendance and payroll platforms. So really, we are what we call an embedded fintech product that enables freelancers and employees to choose that product as soon as they sign up or that they finish a gig or a shift.
Great. Yeah, and that's definitely a needed solution here. And we'll talk a little bit here about what I call the agile workforce, title of my latest book. But in this changing workforce, there's been a lot of growth in freelance work just in general. So everything from people that are freelancing full time to people that are doing it on the side, and more and more skilled professionals are working independently, and more people are finding fulfillment in gig or project work versus a full-time career. But this kind of makes it challenging for companies that want to hire and retain the best employees, because now you have these people they're independent, they're enjoying sort of that freedom. There's certainly some challenges there, and I think your company solves some of those payment challenges. But from your perspective as a company, as a startup, how do you build a culture that attracts employees in this era where there are a lot of opportunities, not even just other companies, but other types of freelance work? Like, what do you need to offer in order to stay competitive in this kind of world?
Absolutely, and it's a great question, Greg. So I can talk about how we're thinking about it at Clair as at the what I would call it the corporate level, which is like us, the founding team, as well as the leadership team. I think you hit on something, which is being independent in your work, as well as finding fulfillment. But I would add one more term, which is flexibility. I think one thing we have seen at Clair for our employees is people love the flexibility of being able to say, well, look, I have objectives that I need to hit. I have, I am working a part of a bigger machine that altogether kind of creates this like pretty good product for our customers. But they still don't want the kind of robust 9 to 5. This was something that we felt even existed before COVID. But when COVID hit, we were kind of in front of a whiteboard and we're like, how are we gonna build a culture that attracts employees in this era?
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like juggling on different options. One of them was let's just stick to the classic 9 to 5, and let's just say that COVID is just a parenthesis and then we all go back to the office. The other one was hey, maybe there's something flexible that we can do, basically meaning, people can still come into the office when it's, post-COVID or when everybody gets vaccinated. But basically, we're going to be a remote first company. And then the third one is to be completely, distributed. I think there's pros and cons for all of them. And what we've realized is actually being in between is something that we're super excited about. So what that means is people want flexibility. They want to work a little bit independently. They don't want to be in an office with people overseeing their screen over their shoulder. So what we've decided to do is say, look, you should come and meet with the team when you feel it's necessary, when your manager feels it's necessary, when leadership feels it's necessary. It's up to you. There are things that are way easier to solve in person. Like, Zoom is great, but
Yeah.
there's nothing as good as just being in person, for certain whiteboarding sessions, for example. And so we wanted to create that flexibility. Talking to our employees, there's a few more things that we brought in, which is, we want people to feel like, on Friday afternoons, especially for our technology team, that this is a time when they're supposed to be working, but we don't give them actually something specific to work on. And what happens then is it creates enormous creativity for our entire team. Friday afternoons are used to
Mm.
develop ideas that they've had while working on the product, or also things for our customers. It's one of those very, very productive times, and we've realized that flexibility and really being independent, kind of letting them kind of a little bit loose in terms of what they want to finish the week on, has yielded a lot of positives for
That's
us.
great. Yeah, that's great. Well, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there of what you're saying, and I think one of the things that I think unifies a team is common, shared purpose and stuff. And yet it's interesting how you've put that focus on independence, and yet, it's kind of a paradox. I mean, you've got to have shared purpose, and yet I completely agree with I think your philosophy of you've got to give people some enough independence to be able to feel ownership, and also I love that idea of just kind of letting people loose on creative projects that that end up, I'm sure, a lot of them end up benefiting the company. So how do you kind of reconcile that, giving people the purpose that they can align themselves with, and yet giving them independence? It's kind of
Yeah.
it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I think something I should have mentioned is how simple yet clear our purpose is at Claire, which is to make hourly workers and gig workers feel financially free.
Nice.
So I think that at most companies that I've met, oftentimes employees who are actually doing the work don't have a clear view of what the purpose is of the company. They know what their task is, they know who their manager is, but it's hard for them to know, kind of, and in a very aligned manner, to say exactly what the purpose is of the company. So one thing we're working very hard on, to the point of almost being repetitive, is just making sure that everybody knows and understands what the purpose is and what the priorities are at the company. So when you have something like this, and you hire people who are motivated for and aligned with that purpose, it's then very easy for them to kind of let loose within that area. So what that basically means is, in order to reconcile both, giving people independence plus making sure they understand and live the purpose, it actually goes down to recruiting. So the way we hire at Claire is, there's a lot of what we do is aligning on why this person wants to be around, what this person wants to be doing over the next 3 to 5 years, and if part of what they want to do is they're very close to the mission and the purpose of the company, then we found a match, and then it goes down to, like, do they have the skills for the job that we need? But what we know is that if you have people who are purpose driven, actually it's pretty easy to reconcile. I think the reason why most companies haven't been able to succeed at it is probably because they didn't have a clear purpose, or the purpose has been written in a more high level manner, where, like, maybe the CEO himself doesn't buy into the purpose, doesn't repeat it enough.
Right.
So I think that's really how you reconcile both.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, can you give examples? You mentioned remote and distributed workforce, and for those listening, what are some of the things that you do? It may not work for every company, but what are some of the things that you do to make people feel part of the team even though they're working remotely?
Yeah, so a few things. One is they get a lot of swag.
Yeah.
I have on my desk a Clair water bottle, a Clair cup, Clair hand sanitizer. There is, they get sweaters. So first of all, is like carrying your brand is something that we want to give to people.
Yeah.
But that's a material thing. I think there's a lot more things in terms of how do you create a team culture? How do you make people feel like they're really part of this bandwagon? Well, there's a few things we invented, and here, we're constantly learning, so we're always evolving in the way we do things. But on a monthly basis, we have a happy hour. It's usually on one of those Friday afternoons where we will get together. One of the team members leads it. We do, depending on who leads it, we do different things. We've had people, we've had a bartender show us how to do mocktails and cocktails. We've had
Nice.
people play digital board games for like hours, and I can tell you that one time people didn't get off the computer until 7:30 at night.
Oh, nice.
It was pretty good, and then finally, there are some abilities right now for us to get together. They're kind of fairly limited, but we do that.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I'll say is everybody's on Slack. We have a bunch of Slack channels that are not purposely made for delivering on targets or other things. It's such much more creative place and a place for people to share random facts. And so all of that put together, we're trying to do the most out of the situation. And then when everything opens up again, we hope we can do offsites and also just get smaller teams to get together without the whole company being there.
Yeah, nice, nice. Well, let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about the industry that you're in and currently disrupting. So the wage advance industry. What made you look at this? What kind of caught your eye and made you want to find ways to improve this world?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way I got into building Clair with my co-founders was when I analyzed a discrepancy between supply and demand in the market, and then the fact that the ways other providers were solving that gap, I thought was just not complete. And so let's talk about the first one, and then let's talk about the second one. So the first one, what we saw statistically speaking, is that there are roughly 60% of whether it is freelancers or W-2 workers who at some point ask to get an advance on their paycheck. That basically is driven by the fact that most Americans work paycheck to paycheck. There's an entire payday lending industry that is as big as $11 billion in revenue every year. And the average cost of an advance is 400% APR. So people are willing to pay 400% APR just because they're in dire need of cash faster. And so that means that 60% of gig workers or other types of hourly workers ask for wage advance. At the same time, only about, let's call it 5 to 6 or 7% of these employees actually have a solution that's handy for them, that their employer or their freelancing platform offers to them. And so that's basically the discrepancy we saw. People want more wage advances, and they want to kind of smoothen out their income. They want to make sure that if a Con Edison bill is due 7 days before their paycheck, that they can plan for that instead of randomly waiting for a 2 week pay cycle, a monthly pay cycle, a weekly pay cycle.
Yeah.
Um, what we saw then looking at the market was that there are solutions, but they weren't really fitting the need of the customers. The first ones were direct to consumer offerings. Typically, those are systems that charge the end user between $5 to $10 per month, if not per transaction. And if you do the math on $5 fee for $100 5 days before your paycheck, that's 365% APR. So basically, it's a digital version of a payday loan.
Yeah.
The other solutions were going through each employer, and that means that if an employer is using, let's call it, either it's career gig or they're using, I don't know, to work, or they're using or they're working at a mom and pop shop that uses ADP. The thing is, a wage advance solution like daily pay and the others need to be implemented by the employer. And that created a lot of friction because wage advances are nice to have for the employer, but they're neat to have for the employee. And so what we did instead is we said, well, why don't we empower the HR tech companies like Career Gig and any other time and attendance payroll system, or any other freelancing platform to actually do this on their own. And that way, you just go from these platforms straight to the employee, and the employees can or the freelancers can sign up on their own. So that's basically how we came about it. And the last thing I'll say is we have our marquee product is you get your wages as soon as feasible, meaning as soon as you finish a gig or that the person hiring you pays you for that, or decides, yes, I approve the hours. So as soon as it's feasible, we pay the employee, and that is always for free. And that's a big deal for us because we realize that someone's going to come up with that idea and develop it, and they're just going to take over the market. So we want to make sure that it's us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and I mean with the with such growth in the gig economy and freelance economy space, I mean, it definitely seems needed. What where else are you kind of looking, if you don't mind sharing, like where else are you looking as far as this is obviously a huge pain point for individuals, but what else do you see that needs to kind of be fixed in the gig and freelance economy that you might be able to help solve?
Yeah, and look, I think there's a few things. What I'm really excited, to be actually partnering with you at Career Gig is thinking bigger, right? I think what we're doing here as wage advance and like better financial services that come with the wage advance is only one slither of solutions that should be given to what I call an independent economy. What that basically means is in the US, if you want healthcare, it's most probably going to get it through your employer. If you want, as an example here, better financial services, you get it probably through your employer, and that will be proven through time. If you want other types of benefits, like for example, free access to city bikes in New York, that's probably also through your employer. And what I think is really exciting about what you guys are working on is saying, how do you give this incredible freelancer centric experience to a freelancer so that they don't want to use any other platform because they know they get all of the benefits with you guys. That's what's super exciting. I think that vision, that the employment benefit world is going to extend to the gig economy, is an incredible insight. It's hard to really deliver on that promise, but I think this is super exciting. I think there's a lot of challenges in that, of course.
Yeah.
It's not easy to put together. Every freelancer is going to have different types of demands and needs. But having a menu, think about like a buffet where people can just handpick what they want and pick and choose, and if they want to also switch them over, they can. That I think is really the future.
Yeah, no, agreed there. And I think, I kind of look at it as there's this staircase of need. It's almost the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of debate about the efficacy of that, but it's still, I think there's some things that still come into play. Is like, everybody needs to work and earn money. After that, they, because that just pays for the absolute fundamentals, and then to have those other things like insurance or other things that they're not even nice to have. I wish that I think in an ideal world those things would be ubiquitous, but and then after that it's the ability to grow. And gig workers, just like employees that work full time, they've got to outpace automation, they've got to outpace the changing needs of skills and everything like that. And so getting that, I mean, I think you're solving such a fundamental thing of like, you can't really get to the next step
Right.
unless you have the money to be able to support yourself when you need it. And
Exactly.
it could be as something as fundamental as just like paying rent, or God forbid a doctor's visit, or something like that. But you're never going to grow unless you have those other two steps as well. And I think, it all, to your point earlier, it all kind of ties together.
I completely agree, and just to double down on that, the number one, what we're seeing is that the number one cause of stress in the U.S. is financial stress, and oftentimes it's people not knowing if they're going to be able to make rent at the end of the month. It's feeling awkward that there's their niece's birthday and they don't know if they should buy them a present or make sure that they have gas for the end of the month.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Things that we're seeing on our side is that people are paying for gas in very small increments, because they just they don't have the ability to just put down $55 to like fill up the tank.
Yeah.
And now so that amount is going up with the price of gas going up. But I completely agree with you. I think giving a better experience to employees starts with decreasing the number one cause of stress that they have, which, as we're seeing, is financial stress. Of course, for other people, it's a case by case basis. Maybe it's something else, but as we're seeing for a lot of Americans, that's what's top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. As a co-founder, as an entrepreneur, and what advice would you have for someone that's considering founding a startup, starting a company? What are some things that they should consider first?
Absolutely. And I always say it's three things: focus, focus, and focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
As as important as it is, what that means is there are so many opportunities out there. It's the idea is usually just it's actually not that much. There's great ideas that we see all the time, but what it goes down to is a founding team's ability to focus. And what that means is saying, what problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? Who's the buyer? What kind of product do we need to build in order to get there? What's the easy way to get to it? And then how can you delight your customer afterwards? What are some of the things that are non P&L related that you want to stand for and know that your brand is standing for? So basically, bring everything down to focus and knowing exactly what you're doing. I can tell you that's going to bring people in a really, really good place compared to most companies that I see.
Yeah, great, great. Well, Nico, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
So a few things. One is you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm under Nico Simko, NICOSIMKO. And then they can also go on getclair.com. That's GETCLAIR.com and follow the Clair journey.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Nico Simko, for founder and CEO of Clair, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to the Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.